Hi, and welcome to Mile High Discussions. My name is Michael LeBois, and I'm your host for this evening's episode. Today we are going to talk about drugs. This is a very sensitive subject, and I would like to welcome my four DPS panelists. These young high school students have an opportunity to sound their opinion for themselves as well as their student base. So now I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, starting with you, Henry.
Hi, I'm Henry. I go to East High School and I play soccer.
Hi, I'm Emily Harrison. I go to East. I'm a sophomore and I play piano.
Hi, I'm Alana Blanford. I go to East High. I'm a freshman and I play soccer.
Hi, I'm Logan. I go to Ridgeview Academy and I play rugby.
Fantastic. Thank you guys for joining me today. So, as I mentioned earlier, our topic will be drugs, and not in the way that you would think. So we have three questions for our young panelists today, and those three questions will tie together nicely, and hopefully we'll have a very wonderful conversation. So our first topic today, while it is still banned in every professional sport, there are still some who choose to use steroids. Could steroid usage in professional sports ever be accepted? For instance, maybe a league or some sort of separation between a steroids league and a non-steroids league. Start with you, Logan.
No, absolutely not. Everybody's body is going to react to steroids differently. Their mind is going to react to steroids differently. So on top of an unfair advantage against their competitors, I just physically, and they're going to have an unfair advantage because even if a steroid was allowed in a professional sport or a league sport, they're going to react to them differently amongst themselves, not just competitively and fitness-wise. So I don't ever really foresee steroids being legal in any type of sport.
So to use this as a bounce off, bodybuilding as a sport actually has a natural division and a steroid division or a boosted division. What about delineating between the two? Creating a secondary league in some ways.
I mean, I guess the real question though is that entertaining? Because is there authenticity in that? Is there integrity in that? In the fact that are you seeing people compete at an authentic level and compete at a level at which they would be competing due to their own level of fitness? And in my mind, I don't think that would be entertaining because it's not them competing per se. So it's the steroid competing. So I don't think that as an individual I would want to watch that.
And then entertainment factor aside, I think it also poses like some serious health questions, especially when you think about steroids in general. If not only access to steroids, different groups of people are going to have different amounts, and I feel like you still are going to have issues. The regulations are still going to have issues with steroids, and many people I feel like would even overdose. And I think having that steroids and non-steroids league tells people that it's okay to take steroids, and maybe even opens up a greater community, our greater drug community. And while like I can be assured that drugs are good in several instances, I think that it means that in some instances they're totally fine and that our society should accept them, when in reality, like especially with the drug issues that we've been having today, like as teenagers, as our community accesses more and more drugs, knowing that like steroids would be an option would not only, it would mean more corruption, it would mean like teenagers see it as an option, it just would be poor
Alana?
decision.
I'd have to like agree with them. Like steroids aren't necessarily needed in most sports, and I think it's like an unhealthy alternative to like just doing your best.
Henry.
I mean, yeah, I'm with them on that. And like the question is this: if you like say you differentiate between two different leagues, it's like where do you draw the line? Like you're saying that it's okay, but like where do you draw it after that? And it just opens up a whole new set of issues, and it just ties back to that like it's not genuine. So like why even go down that path?
So what about something like human growth hormone or HGH? Which is used in some instances for healing purposes, but is considered illegal. Could you maybe see that being legalized just strictly for rehabilitation?
Yes, and no, because I think that then you're venturing into entirely new territory. Because I mean, we use medical marijuana for rehabilitation purposes, and for other purposes, it's frowned upon in certain situations. So, situationally, I think yes, HGH or amongst other drugs potentially could be beneficial and accepted in a rehabilitative format and community. But as far as competitively, athletically, I don't really see any place for it.
I would also just question human growth hormones' role in if, like, because it's illegal, it's an illegal substance. If we were to make access to human growth hormone, legal, then I think that also we'd have a lot of issues with, as we continue to do, with overpopulation. And I feel like while medicine is good in many instances, it's the lack of medicine in other places that unfortunately weeds out people. And I think that as natural evolution, should be as natural as possible. Like, personally, I think that us stepping in, especially we've stepped in, the human generation, we're in the Anthropocene era, right? So we've stepped in so many other places. Why step in something like humans and keeping, and I think that if you especially were to legalize human growth hormone, it would also create questions, as we certainly have, of like making humans into robots. Questionably, not great.
So HGH is actually only illegal, I believe, in the sports realm.
Yeah.
It is used
But
regularly.
if you were to legalize it in other realms, then it would. And also, like, when you apply it as, I would think that it has no difference from steroids, as Logan has mentioned earlier.
Okay.
In that point, Alana?
Yeah. Any other thoughts from?
I think they covered it.
All right.
I wasn't expecting that.
No, that's totally fine. That was kind of the curveball question, if you will, and we decided to throw it to you guys first, so you can get some fastballs here in next. So the next question we have is: with Colorado leading the way in marijuana legalization, we will be focusing on the tax revenue generated for secondary education purposes. For 2017, $500,000 in tax revenue will be used to fund higher education or secondary education scholarships. With the success of this program, should other states look to adapt this policy? I'm going to start with you, Henry.
I would say, I think it comes down to each individual state and it also comes down to the voters in each state, right? Because it's a state process, so we get a vote on it. So I guess I would leave it up to the voters on whether it's a trade-off you're willing to make. I guess with the recent statistics that car accidents, yes, they always go up each year, but they weren't actually as a result of medical or the use of marijuana in our state. That's a statistic now that and since we were kind of a trial state for this, we didn't know fully what was going to happen. Then now that you can look at Colorado, you can decide what are the benefits, what are the trade-offs, should we do this, should that, and then you have to look at that right, is that education funding a benefit? Is it worth some of the detriments that come along with marijuana? I feel that's a question each individual would have to ask.
I would also have to ask you, would the benefits that we're getting from education, on your personal viewpoint, do you think that they are worth it?
Well, I mean, of course, I think that all the educational benefits you can get are worth it. I mean, I think that's the most valuable thing in the world is our education. So yes, but are you saying that it's valuable as a means of getting that funding, or it's kind of a cost benefit analysis? Is the cost worth that benefit? Maybe in my eyes, yes, but maybe in a parent in California who wants to do it, maybe no.
Mm-hmm.
Ilan?
Wow. I think I see what they're saying. I see how it would benefit the other states could see the harms and the benefits out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the words aren't coming out right.
That's okay. Do you think that maybe it's wrong for governments to gain tax revenue off of something that's classified as immoral? Maybe? Considering it's still against federal law,
like the
it's
Protestant
state-based.
Reformation. Can you really, you can make money off of the, what are they called? All the terrible things they were selling that start with an I. Anyways, you can make, like, it's immoral, and I mean, but it's like, it's not on the same level as I would say like prostitution. And I think that because it's used in many medical instances, that having the immoral and stigma around medical marijuana itself, and while it may have like uses that are not, and people use it for obviously not medical purposes oftentimes, but I don't think that like that's any grounds for like prohibiting it. I think that rather people should look at, as Henry noted earlier, the cost-benefit analysis of our people as like the crash rate going up, would our education system benefit when looking into whether or not federal or even like state or local regulations around medical marijuana should be enforced.
I think that just as a community in Colorado and as a nation almost, we've become so desensitized to the use of marijuana specifically that I don't even think it could be classified as immoral at this point. Illegal federally maybe so, but immoral I can't really get behind that. So absolutely, I think that we should be putting tax revenue towards education, and other states should be putting tax revenue towards education. It's been successful, and honestly, $500,000 towards educational scholarships and benefits seems minor to me.
Do you think that the funding then that the medical marijuana does provide, so let's say that, it's illegal now, but do you think that it should provide more educational benefits that it already does, and provide more money? Because I do believe that like a very small percentage of the money that the medical marijuana industry generates goes towards education. So do you think that like there should be a further move towards education, or do you think that the business and the industry should just be left as it is?
Absolutely. Like I was just saying, I mean, I feel like definitely in a multi-million-dollar industry, in terms of tax revenue, $500,000 is minimal, and definitely more should be contributed towards education and just infrastructure in general. And as a society, I don't think that we ever delineate enough funding from any sort of tax revenue towards education, and marijuana, recreational and medical, being at the peak of tax revenue currently, that it should absolutely be devoted to education.
Now, Henry, you made a point earlier, and I might be mixing this up, that it should be focused solely state regulation, like states.
Well, that's the way it's been run so far.
Right.
So, like, I guess why would we divulge from that unless like our nation wanted to come to like a consensus? But then again, you see the issues it even causes with like gay rights, right? Like making stuff federal compared to state. Like just because like we all agree on it, or maybe like there's like a large difference, like it's just way harder for like the federal. So why not do it state by state until like I guess eventually you have your states that don't and do, and they're pretty solidified there.
Maybe in a position where, say, a majority of states have found a way to legalize it, and they all more than 25, let's say 26 exactly. Do you think then federally it should shift?
I mean, I'm not sure if I'm the one to call whether it's
I would say no.
Or
I would
not.
say no. Like, because you think about the people, like let's say you say 25 states, the Midwest, Texas, we throw in a few southern states, like that is not representative of the entire population. And I think especially because we have so many federal regulations, sometimes it's important for states to make those, because if you impose a law that, and 26 is not a good number, I think, because if you impose a law that only half the states agree with on a federal level, then that's going to create some major discontent, not only because you're going to have the people in the other states, but what if not only is it the states with less populations, right, with lesser, like maybe Wyoming is a good example, and then what about if you have California on the other side, then you have that lack of representation. And I think that might just be a problem with our electoral college, but I do think that that would just create more division, especially because it's so contentious.
Well, I would argue if you're voting like against that, what she's saying is that if you look at it this way, you're adding rights to people. You're adding the right for like the use of marijuana, compared to like other federal things where we don't agree on. Like you're taking away rights. I guess like my opinion, like you're taking away rights from like people who choose to be like gay or something like that. But compared to like, I feel like this one, you're not taking away anybody's rights, regardless of which side you're on. You're only adding rights. And if you can prove like I said, like car crashes, yes, they always increased every year in the United States, but in Colorado specifically, it was not due to like marijuana-related accidents. Yes, there was but that's not why it increased. So like, it's like one of those trade-offs. Like you're not like taking away people's
but
rights.
I think it's not that. It's just
It's a
saying
different
that you
federal
can
issue.
make you're making the cost-benefit analysis while ignoring like the majority of the people. Okay, don't flutter your eyes, okay, please. But like our government, our federal government should not be making a cost-benefit analysis and then like imposing their rule when 24 states. Like I specifically think that maybe it might just be a problem with the number, but like
Right. I was giving a hypothetical
right,
as the
of course.
bare minimum.
No,
of the
I
majority.
get it. I get it. I just like I think that like when you have federal regulations, you have to account for a lot more of the people, and I do think that might just be a problem with electoral colleges. I might have noticed earlier that we have to be maybe a little bit more popular in determining things that yes, they're providing rights, but at the same time you're taking like those educational benefits, or especially as states have different benefits like with different taxes, as federal income, as like we have mortgage taxes, as income taxes, as they differ from state to state, each state is going to have dramatically different effects of an industry devoted to marijuana.
Well, and God forbid you try to get a lobbyist to push something controversial through the House of Representatives or the Senate. I mean, there's going to be contention no matter what you do, and no matter in which state you try to impose federally regulated laws on medical marijuana or recreational marijuana usage. But I don't think the question is about what issues are you going to face. The question is the benefit greater than the negative trade-offs of introducing the tax breaks of medical marijuana into a federal bracket?
I think that just because you are looking at taxes, which are very specific to states, because they depend so much on the state that you're in, and I think that because every state's industry is dramatically different, that you still like it's something that shouldn't be regulated on a federal basis unless there are grounds for it becoming a federal issue.
And the grounds could arguably be the education system, because federally
but
it's
every
suffering
state's education
in every state.
system, okay, not all states. I think the majority, yes, our country's education system is failing, but I think that
Struggling.
purely, oh yeah, a lot of struggling. I just don't think that every state's going to see it as the way to go, and especially like.
What? I mean,
What?
when are you ever going to see every state like go the way it goes?
Okay,
Like that's
but
just
I'm not saying
it's
it's
just
an
like an
every
unreal
state thing.
hypothesis to
I'm
say
just-
like everything is going to be like all rainbows and sparkles, and that we're all going to agree on it. That like it's going like if you're saying yes or no, it should be like federally regulated. Like it's just like kind of like this big abstract idea that really I'm not sure you can hone in on if it's just based solely on like the tax revenue. Is like what contributes to that decision. Just saying.
Okay.
Wow. I was actually not expecting that to be nearly as intense as it was, and thank you guys very much for that. Yes, I am actually speechless, and because of that, we're going to head to a break, and when we come back, we'll have your final question.
A lot of people think you have to be really good at numbers, and that's not really true. You do have to be good at solving problems. So we take students through all the basic fundamentals of accounting and hope to give them enough skills to go out and work in an entry-level accounting position.
Welcome back to Mile High Discussions. I'm your host, Michael LeBois. With me, I have Henry, Emily, Alana, and Logan, and we are discussing the topic of drugs. Our final topic today has to do with each year, the U.S. government spends over $10 billion to fight the war on drugs. Should billions continue to be spent on the war on drugs? And if not, how can that money be better used? I'm going to start with you, Alana.
It's a lot of money. I think that in some circumstances the money could be put to like better use, like healthcare or something like that. But I mean, honestly, I think it's an important thing to like put money towards, possibly, but it could be like less money.
What about money that could be redistributed to, say, like the EPA or the National Forest Services? Would you say maybe delineating that money in a different way?
I mean, I guess for that, so right, the war on drugs, it's mainly focused, like all that money goes to, like, I guess, like, as we would see, like border protection, like all like the intel and stuff like that, and less so on like the education, which we've been trying to shift towards as a country, about more education about drugs. Like also a lot of money has to go into like drugs in the United States are the I can't say that word. Yeah, that word. Yeah, I can't say it for some reason. Right, and that we're trying to shift towards education. So I guess shifting that $10 billion more towards education, so there's like a less use of like the want of drugs in America. I guess that's kind of ideal, but like I'm not sure I'm willing to allocate that money elsewhere because I'm not really sure what the world looks like if we don't allocate that money towards the war on drugs. Like I'm not sure how.
So
that
maybe
would
just
look.
within the program.
But Henry, do you feel like the war on drugs is really the influx of drug usage is being used and magnetized by those people in the education system, or more by people who aren't involved in the education system? So in which case, would the cause and effect really be meaningful of allocating, for that reason of allocating the money towards the educational system?
Users, regardless of where, if you're in that system or if you're not. So, but I guess if you're trying to like do the most impact, it's hard to judge right now where the most impact is. So I guess like trying it in like the education system and trying to educate like kids at like a young age where it's still mandatory by law to go to school, on like the effects and the uses of it, like especially like I guess with like marijuana, right, the use like effects of using marijuana, like the tar it puts in your lungs, something like that to educate kids so we reach almost like our entire like growing up like future generation. So are you going to get every kid? But you might prevent a fair amount of kids from at least doing it, or at least being way more safe about it, or you know.
But in my mind, the war on drugs isn't being waged against students and people in high school and middle school, potentially in college, that might be experimenting with marijuana or gateway drugs, so to speak. I think that it's being waged more on a completely opposite side of the scale.
Well, I would argue it's the war on what it's doing to our citizens, and that it's maybe not best for their health, and that it has a lot of negative consequences, which we're trying to eliminate.
So would you say that maybe re-implementing the DARE program, for instance, something that I did when I was in grade school and high school, being more education, giving more education towards younger citizens, for instance, like students.
Is that like program like the Scared Straight kind of program?
Similar, yes.
Yeah, right.
But I think that everybody understands that drugs are bad and you shouldn't use drugs.
That's not
but
true.
you don't understand you know, like it's hard to like encompass unless you have read all the knowledge, the amount of myths that go around, I guess, like, or like the untrue facts or things that you think like maybe logically in your head are correct but maybe aren't.
I think that you guys, like, well, as Logan pointed out, we're kind of like ignoring a big part of the situation, and that's the fact that we just have so many addicted users in the first place. Or even if we implement, which we need to obviously implement educational systems, as Henry has noted, that help deal with that help students learn that drugs are bad. But I think that less money needs to be focused on the access of drugs, but rather towards the rehabilitation of people who are currently accessing drugs, because instead of cutting off the supply, people are going to find the supply no matter what. If the government puts more money into the program in order to like regulate borders, they can do that, but it'd be much more effective for them to eliminate the consumer market for drugs in the United States by first like aiming at the people who are already addicted and then moving on to the people who could future be addicted.
I mean,
Going back to the original question though, and Alana, this is more directed towards you because I want to hear what you have to say. Can that money be devoted towards something more meaningful, or is it being allocated to the right cause?
I mean, I do think that it could go towards other causes, but like Henry said earlier, like there's not real like evidence or something like that supporting like us differently if we put that money, like if we used it differently. So I think that it could go towards other causes, but the cause that it's going to is like familiar.
I think
sorry, I was actually going to bounce off of your idea originally, Emily, and you can follow up with me. What if we allocated a portion of that money to mental health rehabilitation as well as the rehabilitation of drug users, considering, or addicts in general, considering there are not very many government plans left within that field?
Well, I think that that'd just be like a very good example of, as Alana noted, wherever we put the money towards, whether or not we're keeping it within our drug industry, which $12 billion, we are not experts. We cannot know what $12 billion does, but we can know that it's totally contingent on what programs exist within our drug policies. So if we are using that money towards things like rehabilitation and like education, which I do think we should, which I'll talk or we'll hit on in a second, then that's going to be very different. We might want to give more money to that rather than taking it away and moving it towards something else. I don't think that we necessarily have the evidence or the expertise that we would need in order to address the amount of funds that are put into it, but I rather think that we should be addressing what is contained within those programs that currently exist.
All right, quick final thoughts. Anything you want to say? Start with you, Henry.
I would just like to give a quick shout out to a local charity here in Colorado. It's Bicycles for Humanity. We package and ship bikes to Africa, and they make a huge change. And then you can find us at b4hcolorado.org.
Awesome. Emily?
Unrelated to that, great, Henry, good job. I think that we should, as a society, be donating more time to also like charities and just groups. And maybe as a society, we need to ensure that our government is moving towards those policies that we discussed, or to discuss towards rehabilitation and re-education of people. And I think that like students need to realize that you need to be more involved in advocating for it. Maybe not even anti-drugs, but advocating for government change in those areas. And then I think the younger generation needs to take it up as a cause in order for us to see the benefit in the future.
Fantastic. Alana? Remember, it can be anything you want to talk about.
Oh. I'm good, actually.
All right. Fantastic. And Logan?
I think that $12 billion or however many $billion is just such an astronomical amount of money that it's just unnecessary to allocate all $12 billion of those dollars towards the war on drugs. So I think that keeping it on the drug spectrum and allocating money towards rehabilitation and towards education instead of just the war on drugs is much more effective than solely the war on drugs itself, which is looming. But my point is, don't jump off the spectrum, but stay within the topic of drugs for those funds.
Fantastic. I want to thank you guys for addressing a very sensitive topic, and I appreciate everything you guys had to say today. If you guys have a chance to continue to perpetuate these ideas, please do. So I'd like to thank Henry, Emily, and Alana, and Logan for joining me today on Mile High Discussions. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.